Well, everyone, it's the week after Easter. Have you eaten all your chocolate bunnies? How about your peeps? Do they still make peeps? Yeah? Okay, good. I love peeps. Even though we're a week out, I'm still thinking about Easter weekend, and specifically Holy Saturday, also known as Silent Saturday. And that's because I was lucky enough to encounter the words that we read today by Jacqueline Woodson, the words that are in the back of your order of service. She says, "Sometimes our grief is the most sacred sound." I couldn't let that go when I first read it. I kept coming back to it, the way you return to a piece of music that has caught you somewhere you weren't expecting. So I invite you to explore these words with me this morning, but to do so, we'll need to go back a week, not to Easter, but to the day before, to Silent Saturday. It's the long Saturday that comes between the drama of Good Friday and the hope of Easter Sunday. By the way, do you know what happens on that Saturday according to the Christian scriptures? Nothing. Lots of silence. The disciples hid behind locked doors. The women sat with their grief in the dark. The stone stayed where it was. God was silent. No angel, no sign, just the unbearable ordinariness of a day after catastrophe, just the terrible persistence of a time that you would do anything to stop. The gospel writers move quickly past this day. Mark barely mentions it. Luke and John barely acknowledge it. We rush from Friday's darkness to Sunday's dawn because we know how the story ends. We're Easter people, so we know what's coming. But the people in that story didn't know. Mary Magdalene didn't know. The disciples didn't know. They sat in their grief on Saturday not knowing if anything would happen on Sunday except what happened on Saturday. More silence, more of that particular suffocating agony, loss without meaning, waiting without promise. They had no idea that they were in the middle of that story. They thought they were at the end. They thought they were at the end. We too experience our own silent Saturdays, the seasons when the story we thought we were living comes to a sudden and terrible stop. When the thing we counted on, the relationship, the health, the faith, the future we planned is gone. And we're left standing in a wreckage of Saturday, not knowing if Sunday is coming. Not knowing if we're in the middle of the story or at the end of it. And so that's what I mean when I say Silent Saturday this morning. Not a day on the church calendar, but a season of the soul, the in-between time, the waiting place, the moment after loss and before whatever comes next, if anything comes next. Some of you are in that place right now. Some of you have been there for a long time. This sermon is for you. The silent Saturdays of our lives make me think of low tide. At low tide, the water pulls back, slowly at first and then all at once. The ocean retreats from the shore and the reef is left exposed. All that was hidden suddenly stranded in the open air. Creatures that live in the deep find themselves now in shallow pools. The world they knew was shrunk to something small and still and surrounded by rock. I love looking at tide pools at low tide. There's so much happening there, right? So much wonder to be had watching the creatures in their tiny pools. And every creature in that pool has learned to live in this in-between space. The vana tucked under the rock. The small fish still holding in water barely deep enough to cover them. The sea anemone folded in on itself, waiting. Not dying, but waiting. They've built their entire lives in the place that water sometimes leaves. Saturday is low tide. It is the moment when God seems to have pulled back, when the depths have retreated and what's left is small and exposed and terrifyingly still. And we stand at the edge of it and we think, something's gone wrong. Where did the water go? And will it come back? I think many of us know Silent Saturday. The diagnosis has come, but the prognosis hasn't. The relationship has ended, but you haven't figured out who you are without it. The loss has happened, the death, the divorce, the job, the dream, the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now, and you're stranded there in the shallow water waiting for something that might not come. Even nationally, it feels like we're stuck in Silent Saturday, and Woodson names it precisely. The waiting of Silent Saturday is the triumph of injustice, alienation, and violence, all without a word from God, all without a word. That's the hardest part, isn't it? We want a sign. We want meaning. We want some voice to tell us the tide is coming back, that the waiting has a purpose, that the story is going somewhere, and silence just keeps going. The water stays out, and the pool stays small and still and exposed. And that silence can feel uncomfortable, can't it? So uncomfortable we try to push people past it, pretending it doesn't exist, just like the gospel writers did. We're handed timelines for grief. 6 months and you should be dating again. A year and you should be over it. 2 years and people stop asking how you are because surely by now the tide has come back in. Surely by now you must be swimming again. I have to say, sometimes the church is the worst offender. We justify pain as redemptive. We offer the balm before the wound has even been named. We say they're in a better place before the body is cold. We say everything happens for a reason, as if meaning is something you could hand someone like a glass of water. We explain away the pain before the person has had a chance to simply feel it. But sometimes that's not what we need, is it? Sometimes we just need someone to acknowledge our pain, to sit with us in our sadness, in our silence, to say, that must really hurt, without trying to make it not hurt. And just today I was reading the story of Jesus and Lazarus. And do you know what Jesus did when he learns that Lazarus died? He wept. He felt the grief with his community. He didn't say Lazarus is in a better place. And if you believe that story, he knew he was going to bring Lazarus back to life, but he still weeps with his community. When we refuse to let people stay in Saturday, when we rush them towards a resurrection they have not yet experienced, we sometimes unknowingly send a message that something is wrong with you. You should be further along. You should have found hope by now, felt the presence of God by now, made meaning of this by now. And if you haven't, if you're still stranded in the shallows, still watching the horizon, waiting for the tide, then you must be doing grief wrong. You must be broken. Well, I'm here to tell you today, you're not broken. You're just in Saturday. And Saturday is holy ground too. I want to say that again slowly because I think some of you have needed to hear it for a long time. If you're sitting here this morning and you're feeling grief or the heaviness of a loss, if the stone has not rolled away, if the water has not come back in, if you're still in that shallow pool waiting for a Sunday that has not yet come, there's nothing wrong with you. You've not been abandoned. The tide will come back. The ocean doesn't forget the shore. But you cannot rush the tide. You cannot will it back by believing harder or grieving better or forcing yourself to feel something you don't feel. The tide operates on its own terms, in its own time, according to forces larger than any of us. But what you can do in this moment is survive the low water. Hold still, conserve what you have, Tuck into the rock if you need to. Cling to those you love. Find resources and find each other. Trust that this exposed, stranded, terrifyingly still moment is not the end of your story. It's the middle. It's Saturday. Saturday is not the end, my friends. Woodson writes, "You don't have to pretend the wait isn't agony. If it feels like God is silent, say so. Your doubts, your grief are safe here." That is what I want this community to be. A place where you can say, the water's out and I'm stranded and I don't know if it's coming back. And no one hands you a timeline. No one points to Sunday before Sunday has come. Because the most sacred thing we can do sometimes for each other is to climb down into the tide pool and sit there. Not rush to fix it, not rush to explain it, not cup water in our hands and pour it over someone as if we could manufacture a tide. But to say, I see you there in the shallow water. I'm here too. You're not stranded alone. Then, towards the end of the reading, Woodson asks, what do you hear in that silence? And then she answers her own question. Sometimes our grief is the most sacred sound. Grief as sacred sound. I want to stay with that. Again, I can't help think about tide pools. If you crouch at the edge of a tide pool, it's not actually silent. If you're still enough, you hear things. Think about it. Maybe you've observed these tide pools recently or as a child. What do you hear? Maybe the small movements of water, the almost imperceptible sounds of creatures going about the work of being alive in a hard place. Your own breath. The distant, patient sound of the ocean that's not gone, only retreated. Even the silence has a story to tell you. Just listen. Listen. We come to this service because the world demands Easter, and some of us are still in Saturday. Some of us have been in Saturday for a very long time. But guess what? There's a community of people here around you today that may be in Saturday too. The person who's in Saturday that you don't know about. The person that drove here alone and sat in the parking lot for 5 minutes before they could make themselves come in this morning. The person who sang hymns based on muscle memory alone because singing is one of the few things working right now. Saturday is not the exception in this room. It is the texture of what it means to be human and love things that can be lost. You're not stranded alone in the tide pool, friends. Look, the pool is full of us. Every creature in a tide pool has learned something those in the open ocean never had to. They've learned to survive exposure. They have learned to hold on when the water is gone. They have learned that low tide is not the end, that the same ocean that pulled back will return, and that the water remembers the shore, that the depths have not forgotten them. And that is what we're learning together in this place this morning, how to survive Saturday, how to be for each other the evidence that life is still possible in the in-between. And I cannot promise you an immediate Sunday. That's not mine to promise. But here's what I can promise you, and I mean it with everything that I have. You're not alone in the tide pools of life. Even if we can't see the next tide pool over, it has creatures there holding on to. Look around you. Every person in this room is a creature of the tide pool, strange and small and surviving. Every one of us has known low water. Every one of us has tucked into the rock and waited. And every one of us is here, still here, which means we've already survived more Saturdays than we thought we could. And that's not nothing. That's everything. The ocean has not forgotten the shore, my friends. The water is coming back. And until it does, however long it takes, however deep the silence gets, we hold on together. We are each other's evidence that Saturday is not the end. So if you came here today carrying a Saturday, I want you to leave carrying something else too. Not a promise of an immediate Sunday, but the knowledge that you are not alone in the shallows. That every person in this room has known low water, that we've all had to tuck into the rock and waited. And we're all still here, every one of us, some with smiles and joy to share, which means the tide has turned before and it will turn again. Be still. Be patient. Be held. And listen. Just listen. Beneath the silence, the tide turning. The tide is turning. May it be so. Amen.